Imagine you're about to buy a new laptop, or maybe you're building a new PC, right? You go online, and suddenly you realize the prices have just absolutely skyrocketed.
Yeah, it's a pretty rude awakening for a lot of people right now.
It really is. And, well, you're about to find out exactly why. Today we're doing a deep dive into why the biggest tech giants on Earth are fighting this absolute cutthroat battle over microscopic pieces of silicon.
Yeah.
And, but why that battle is directly draining your wallet.
Right. It's a wild situation. Yeah. And the mission for today is to really uncover the reality of this massive 2026 chip shortage, because it's not just a temporary blip.
No, not at all. We're going to look at why these supply constraints are basically physically locked in until 2027. We'll talk about how this is sparking just record-breaking factory investments, and like we mentioned, how this explosive demand for AI is squeezing the everyday consumer.
I mean, if you want to understand why your next computer is going to cost you so much more, we have to start at the absolute center of the tech universe right now.
Right, which is TSMC's 3-nanometer chip manufacturing lines over in Taiwan.
Exactly. The N3 process, as the industry calls it. The demand for these specific chips has just completely overwhelmed the global supply.
And TSMC is actually actively rationing access to it, right?
Yeah, they have to. According to semi-analysis, roughly 60% of the entire 3-nanometer output this year is just being absorbed by AI-related demand.
Wow, 60%. That is a massive chunk.
It's huge. And because of that, DigiTimes reported that only, long-term loyal customers are getting priority.
Meaning Apple and Nvidia.
Right. Apple and Nvidia are taking the vast majority of production, along with Qualcomm, and the competitors are just left scrambling.
Okay, let's unpack this. It feels like TSMC is a high-end nightclub, right?
Yeah.
Where Apple and Nvidia are the VIPs breezing right past the bouncer, while heavyweights like AMD and Intel are just stuck outside on the sidewalk.
That is exactly what it's like. I mean, AMD only secured 95,000 wafers for 2026.
Which is way short of their target, right?
Yeah, their target was 120,000. So they were missing out on millions of high-end chips. And Intel is getting an even smaller share.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. Why would TSMC turn away business or ration supply like this?
Yeah.
Doesn't a business just want to sell as much as possible to whoever is buying?
What's fascinating here is that it's not about turning away money. I mean, Deutsche Bank actually put out a note calling this a happy problem for TSMC.
A happy problem.
Yeah, because their orders are fully booked through 2026 and 2027. It's really about hard physical limits. They literally have to prioritize the giants who can guarantee massive, consistent volume over multiple years.
I see. So if demand is off the charts and they're booked solid through 2027, the obvious question is, why doesn't TSMC just build more factories faster?
Oh, they're certainly trying. And that brings us to the sheer amount of money being thrown at this bottleneck.
Right, the CapEx numbers. Because TSMC set a record capital expenditure for 2026, right? Something like $52 to $56 billion.
Exactly, up to $56 billion. And they have up to 10 fabs. Those are the fabrication plants either under construction or planned in Taiwan and the U.S.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. $56 billion is a staggering amount of money. If I throw $56 billion at a problem, I expect it fixed tomorrow.
You'd think so, yeah.
But despite all that spending, the wait times for these N3 wafers are sitting at a brutal 52 to 78 weeks. Why is the wait time still up to a year and a half?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you realize that money just doesn't bend time. Building these fabs and achieving perfection at the literal atomic level, it takes years.
Because they have to be perfectly isolated from vibrations and dust.
Oh, completely. The clean rooms are thousands of times cleaner than a surgical operating room. A single microscopic stray dust particle ruins the entire circuit. And then the machines themselves, the extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, they take months or years just to calibrate. You can't bribe physics to go faster.
But people are trying to bride the clock anyway. Because I saw in Bloomberg that desperate clients are paying these hot run premiums.
Oh, yeah. They are paying 50 to 100% above standard rates just to get chips processed a little bit faster on the existing lines.
Paying double just to cut the line slightly. That is insane.
It really shows the desperation. The crunch is actually so severe that TSMC had to halt the launch of new 3-nanometer projects.
Wait, they stopped new projects entirely?
Yeah, they're literally steering clients away, telling them to redesign for the newer 2-nanometer process instead, which isn't even fully ramped up.
Which means companies have to scrap their current plans.
I read that's even forcing Nvidia to completely redesign its future Feynman AI chip. Right. That chip was originally set for 2028 or 2029, line, and now they have to re-architect it because the 3-nanometer capacity they needed just won't be there. The physical manufacturing constraints have become the absolute ceiling for the tech industry's growth.
So we have trillion-dollar companies throwing billions of dollars at each other over essentially microscopic real estate. But so what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Well, unfortunately, the consumer is the one who ends up footing the bill for all this chaos.
Right, because this CPU crunch is stacking on top of another massive issue, a severe memory chip shortage.
Exactly. In fact, OpenAI's COO specifically called out memory chips as the top bottleneck for AI development right now.
And TrendForce put out a projection that is just wild. They project that data centers are going to consume a staggering 70% of all memory chips produced in 2026.
70%, leaving almost nothing for the rest of us.
It's like, okay, imagine AI data centers are this incredibly thirsty elephant that just walked up to the watering hole, right? And our laptops and PCs, they're just the little birds suddenly left fighting over a tiny puddle.
That is a perfect way to put it. The consumer market is just immediate collateral damage in this AI arms race.
And Micron's CEO confirmed this too, right? Saying these tight conditions are going to continue beyond 2026.
Yeah, Sanjay Mehrotra confirmed it. It's a dual crunch of memory and processing power, and it's fundamentally changing the economics of consumer electronics.
Which brings us to the actual price tags. The immediate result of all this is that Intel and AMD CPU prices are surging by up to 15%.
Right, and PC makers can't just absorb that cost, they have to pass it on to you, the buyer.
And buyers are definitely reacting. IDC had to aggressively slash its 2026 global PC shipment forecast. They originally thought it would be a 2.4% drop late last year. Now, they're projecting an 11.3% decline.
That is a massive downward revision.
Because rising component costs are actively killing consumer demand. People see the price of a new laptop and they just say, nope, I'll keep my old one for another year.
Exactly. So with consumer prices surging and TSMC's VIP line locked down by Apple and Nvidia, the companies that are left out in the cold have to go somewhere else.
Right, which brings us to the desperate measures. How long is this scramble going to last?
Well, right now, the 6 largest fabless chip companies like Broadcom, MediaTek, even Apple for some secondary stuff, they are being forced to evaluate Samsung and Intel as alternative foundries.
That's a huge shift. But I thought Samsung was really struggling with their 3-nanometer process, like terrible yield issues.
Yeah, absolutely are. Yield is basically the percentage of chips on a wafer that actually work without defects, and Samsung has been openly struggling to get good yields.
So they're throwing away a lot of expensive garbage.
Exactly. But despite that, Samsung is seeing a huge spike in interest. Their utilization rates exceeded 80% in the first quarter of 2026.
Wait, really? Companies are so desperate they'll sign up for a process that they know is basically burning half the chips.
Yes, because having a product with terrible profit margins is still better than having no product to sell at all.
That is wild. And what about Intel? If the losers of the TSMC VIP line are crawling to Samsung and Intel, is this actually a massive, unexpected opportunity for Intel to stage a comeback?
This raises an important question, right? Because desperation definitely breeds opportunity. Intel stands to benefit massively as a sort of pressure valve for this overheating supply chain.
So they might actually pull off their foundry reboot.
It certainly helps them. But we have to keep the scale in perspective. TSMC still holds a dominant 58% of the global market.
58%. And Samsung is at what, 12%?
Roughly 12%, yeah. So TSMC is still the absolute king, which aligns perfectly with this DigiTimes assessment that I completely agree with.
What do they say?
They noted that procurement and capacity allocation have officially replaced innovation as the biggest operational challenge in the semiconductor industry today.
Wow. So it's not about who has the best idea anymore. It's about who can actually get the factory time to build it.
Exactly. And both the Synopsys CEO, Sassine Ghazi, and SemiAnalysis, they both confirm this crunch will persist through at least 2027.
Because by 2027, AI demand is expected to consume an estimated 86% of that N3 output.
86%, just for AI.
That is just staggering. So let's summarize this journey we just went on. We traced how a bottleneck at just a few ultra-advanced factories in Taiwan has cascaded into a $56 billion happy problem for TSMC.
Right.
We saw how it forced this desperate pivot to alternative foundries like Samsung and Intel, even with terrible yields. And ultimately, we uncovered how the insatiable demand from AI data centers is directly causing the price of your next PC to surge.
It's all connected. The physical constraints of reality are finally catching up with the software industry.
So the next time you're browsing online and you see a price hike on a piece of consumer tech, You'll know exactly which VIP line in Taiwan and which thirsty AI data center caused it.
You certainly will.
But I want to leave you all with one final kind of provocative thought to ponder. If physical manufacturing capacity and not brilliant ideas, not software code, is going to be the absolute ceiling for AI development through 2027, how will this force tech giants to innovate differently?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, will we see a massive pivot away from just brute forcing more power and bigger models? Will they have to move toward radical efficiency simply because there's literally no silicon left to buy? Keep an eye out for that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.